Hello and welcome to episode 217 of the Crate and Crowbar. I'm going to sneeze. Hello and welcome to episode 217 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 30th of November 2017. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Good evening / morning, depending on when you're listening.
Indeed, or afternoon
perhaps.
Or lunchtime. It's just you and I for now.
It is.
Tom, because of because Pip's not here physically, so that's why that can't happen. And Tom F is a little bit under the weather, so apologies for a mono Tom experience. But I'm a big fan of both the mono and duo Tom, stereo Tom approaches to podcasting.
Tom. But yeah, get well tuned soon. Get well tuned, Tom.
Get well tuned, Tom. We're starting off as we do this all the time.
I know.
Tom. Why are we struggling?
I don't know. It's because Black Friday's happened and I'm destroyed.
Yes, I hope you enjoyed last week's pod special with a different mono Tom experience, the Tom Francis experience with guests Zach and Kevin from Asymmetric.
Yeah, that was nice, isn't it? Stepped
in to bail us out during what can only be described as Black Friday work apocalypse.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's over now though. That's good. Till next year.
There are no more bargains, Tom.
I live in fear that they'll do a Black Friday in March or something. As an equivalent, 6 months away.
Omega Wednesday.
Oh. Makes me sad.
Is that
just
the noise
think
you'd make?
About it. That is the noise I'd make. And it's, yeah. Anyway, video games.
Video games, yeah. So, we're going to talk about the video game news. And so, one piece of news that came out yesterday, I think, was a pretty substantial update on the future of Destiny 2, which is a PC game, and we can talk about it now. So, this was interesting because they are explicitly addressing stuff that you and I have talked about. We talked about it on the pod. Everybody I know who plays Destiny, who played Destiny 1, has experienced, which is that the game is very good. One of my highlights of the year, but it also sort of ends.
Absolutely. I've not played it for many weeks, and normally like Destiny 1 was always, I'd drift away from it for a month, but I'd come right back to it.
And they've explicitly said they want to fix this. They want to make changes for the people who want Destiny to be their hobby. And I've got mixed feelings about this because I don't have the bandwidth to have the relationship with Destiny 2 that I had with Destiny 1.
No.
And I think it was you that said on this podcast that it is actually quite nice to play 60 hours of something and say, I had a good time and I don't have to keep playing this.
Yeah. And you can come back for the expansions, like whenever they do an expansion.
Which is like next week.
Next week. And so you can come back for 2, 3, 4 weeks and then sort of drift away from it again. I think that's a perfectly fun, good, healthy relationship to have with the game. And also I think they're a little bit unfortunate that the expectations, they are responsible for this as well, but the expectations around Destiny among their audience are that it's a persistent game, but people have still paid the price of a normal game for it. Like they've not paid extra for this ongoing infinite content that people want.
Yeah.
So they've bought the $40 game, and if I buy Wolfenstein, for example, I'm very happy with having like a 10, 12 hour experience out of that, and I could put it on the shelf and, I feel like I've got what I wanted out of it. But I've had like 35 hours, 40 hours of great time with Destiny 2. And for me, I'm quite satisfied by that, but the community is obviously desperate for more, and there's that expectation, isn't there, around it that's so different to other games.
And it's funny because a lot of the reasons Destiny 1 was so sticky is because it was broken as fuck.
And also, and just kind of gross. Like, so the grinding in it was just terrible. Like grinding, I always hated grinding for stats on guns. I thought that is a terrible thing to have to do with your time. The material stuff was dreadful. Like people forget how bad Destiny 1 was in terms of its progression systems and its persistent systems.
That's why they reinvented it like 3 times.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, like to compare, like the problems they're responding to here and the changes they're making are both less severe and less radical in terms of problem versus solution to the things that occurred over the course of Destiny 1, a game that reinvented itself about 4 times.
Kind of feels like they might have to do the same with Destiny 2, just on they're on the same
problem.
journey.
Like we made it too balanced.
No, we have to. So they've announced through a blog post a huge series of changes that are going to arrive alongside the expansion in the week following the expansion. And these include masterwork weapons, which reintroduces a randomized stat upgrade element that is sort of harks back a little bit to Destiny 1's original gun systems, where you could drop 10 of the same gun and it would have different stat rolls and stuff. And there was an optimal stat roll for that particular gun. So people who wanted the best gun would have to kind of drop it again and again and again, and raid to try and get the optimal loadout.
Yeah, at its best, that system worked because those optimal guns were a matter of opinion. There were schools of thought about it would be called a god roll, what a god roll entailed for a given weapon archetype.
Yes.
And you didn't necessarily have to agree with it if you had a particular way of playing or a particular approach to it. Usually these are referred to in regard to PvP specifically as well. I hope that the new system, they've said that it'll be, that that randomized node on a masterwork weapon will be rerollable. Which is very similar to a system from Destiny 1. So it essentially becomes a resource sink. Once you've got a masterwork weapon, it's about re-rolling it to try and get the thing you want. It does give guns personality, which is nice. It'll be interesting to see how they make that feel meaningful. Because it also comes with things like stat tracking on what guns, which is a pretty tied and two way of making people feel attached.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of upgrades they're talking about are like, there's loads and loads of buffs to, like, for example, reload speed in Destiny. And I don't know what +1 reload speed feels like. And I don't know what +10 reload speed feels like. I think this is huge, probably like the mod system they have, where I don't know what +X speed is really for my character. I don't feel it when I actually go back into the game with this thing on. And I worry about that for these tiny incremental upgrades for these masterwork weapons. I mean, they've got to feel meaningful for the system.
Yeah. Because in Destiny 1, it was always a combination of stats, and you'd never think about stats in exact terms. It was always because, a gun would have different bars, relative, like, rate of fire versus impact would be the most obvious one.
Yeah.
And that settled the gun into an archetype. So the high rate of fire, relatively low impact sniper rifle versus the low rate of fire, very high impact sniper rifle would play differently and have different uses. And then within that, you also had the perks, which would be things like land 3 headshots in a row and it refills the clip. And that is an optimal archetype for PvE because you were regularly landing shots on things with giant heads.
Yep.
But a terrible one for PvP because not aspiring to get 3 headshots in a row. You're aspiring to get shots on target in a row.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that gave guns personality. And those things do exist in Destiny 2, but it's far less, you do feel far less strong sense of ownership over particular weapons, I think, because those distinctions are less pronounced. And it feels less necessary to have a perfect rolled, particular auto rifle in order to compete.
Yeah. I wonder, like, to what extent, leaning towards those hobbyist players or the more hardcore side of the Destiny player base will actually negatively impact the rest of the player base at all. I mean, if they create a situation where people who are really into the game want to grind out those master weapons and get the optimal rolls, can do like harder raid content, then that's cool. But will it, for example, ruin my ability to just drop into trials, which is their hardcore kind of PvP weekend mode? If everyone there, like I've already had this problem with Destiny in fairness, where everyone was just rolling my demultitals, in trials for a while.
The PvP mess has been strangely garbage.
Which
is again a problem Destiny 1 had from time to time, but nonetheless.
But these things ebb and flow, I suppose. It's just, to what extent do you sacrifice the casual players to the persistent hardcore players? And, that's probably the dilemma that they're really wrangling with at the moment. Because if they go too far down that route, then you end up with the elite weapons, the elite strata of, fashionably good weapons, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. That said, though, maybe that gives the game the grit it needs to have pull. Like, this is a strange thing to consider. Like, maybe it needs to be a little bit worse to be better. You know what I mean? Like, if it's too painless to get good gear, then gear isn't special.
Yeah.
And it's, it's
really true.
The experience of Diablo 3 is a very different game to Destiny in some ways, but one thing it has is that feeling like you're constantly getting something new that just blows the last thing you had out of the water. Because of some crazy combo with your abilities or just sheer numbers or something like that. And Destiny doesn't really have that beyond a certain point because eventually you're fishing for incremental upgrades to your power level.
Yeah.
And the way that curves off means that you get to, real hardcore power gamers can work the system until they're, power level 305 or something. But most people will stop at like 260, 270, which is when you can do the raid.
Yeah.
And there isn't really an incentive to go higher than that, to be honest.
It's true. And I guess, I mean, these type of systems always feel like a replacement for the actual content, if you know what I mean. Like, what would really solve people's problems is a new area or a new place to go, which is the expansion, obviously.
Which is the expansion, which is a paid for expansion, obviously. But like, it's a tricky one because I can see you almost feel a bit for them because they obviously looked at what were objectively problems with the first game, I suspect to do specifically with retention. Like Destiny 1 had a big problem with people finishing the campaign, which wasn't very good in Destiny 1, and then never touching it again.
Yeah.
And that entire game existing after you hit level 20, and then only if you were willing to deal with its jank and its strange grindy kind of stuff to get the great stuff about that game. Destiny 1 is pretty good from the start, has some really great moments, and then you get to finish the campaign, you get to level 20, and then it opens up again. It still gets bigger and better. And then it's great for like another 10 hours after that, and then you run out of stuff.
It dies, yeah, for sure.
And then it dies. Which is, I don't know which is worse. Like every Destiny 1 player I've talked to over the last couple of months has said, I just haven't stuck with it and I don't know why and I don't love it. And like I loved the first game. And I'm yet to decide, I can't make my mind up about whether or not that's something Destiny 2 has done wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like
sure.
it doesn't cater to the Stockholm syndrome of the people who stuck with the first game.
Yeah, it's a very strange one, isn't it? I think that the expansions are everything really. Like, does Trials of Osiris?
Curse of Osiris.
They've got this new kind of rearranging dungeon thing they're adding, which is a new type of dungeon that they're doing, to where they will regenerate and shift and change supposedly each time you go into it. So it's good to see them experimenting with new formats like that might actually keep people, really hardcore people, happy.
Yes, and I mean in terms of the comparative lifespan, it only really needs to be better than The Dark Below, which was Destiny 1's first expansion and worst expansion. Yeah. By miles. So,
yeah, that's true.
Although I do think that they could stand to bring back some of the things that so one feature that's missing from Destiny 2 that I've heard multiple different people mention as, why is this gone? Cause I know like private PvP matches are coming back in January. So that's happening, is, secret, like level secrets. So like the Black Spindle quest in, and the Return to the Vault of Glass in The Taken King. I appreciate the words I just said mean absolutely nothing. But essentially what these were like, so occasionally in Destiny 1, Destiny 1 had a daily mission. So every day, every day there is a different, single player mission to do to get a bonus and a different multiplayer strike to do to get a bonus. And that single player mission would rotate every day. And that was the way they got you back doing content. And they've replaced that system with the arguably better different planetary focus every day. So now every day in the game it says, go to this planet and do whatever you like there. And it's on paper a lot more open, because you're not just replaying the exact same missions over and over again.
Yeah.
But one thing they did in Destiny 1 was have a system where when these, single player missions get resurfaced, certain of them would be in like a special variant where something else can happen in the mission that can't happen when you're playing it as part of the campaign. So for example, there's a puzzle you can do that allows you to travel through time and do a mad thing that gets you a special gun, or like, a race against time to kill a hidden boss in a level that gets you a rare gun. And those things were super cool. When people discovered them, it blew people's minds. And it wasn't something that was in Destiny 1 for 2 years. Like that was added after 2 years, but there's nothing like that in Destiny 2. And it feels like feels like that would be a painless addition to the game. Not, I mean, obviously to work, but it doesn't run counter to any of the goals of Destiny 2's design. And I think the absence of stuff like that does make you feel less, because it would always be that thing where maybe I hadn't played Destiny 1 for a couple of days, but the daily today is the one where you can get Black Spindle if you can get some friends together and do this super hard challenge version of the map.
Yes.
And that would bring you back. That it's sort of missing that kind of thing. I think I'd quite like to see them bring that back.
Yeah, it's because they've amazingly just wiped the slate completely clean and put all of those planets into the bin that they had in Destiny 1, all that content, all that stuff they'd built. And I'm sure there are good, probably technical reasons for doing that, you know, moving away from the old, generation of consoles into new environments and kind of having to support the old environments. Obviously just, I mean, it's a weird challenge, isn't it? I think there's some people who are expecting them to sort of keep the old stuff.
I was never expecting that.
No, nor was I really. I mean, do you want Mars and the moon hanging around? I mean,
go away, moon.
Go away, moon. I mean, part of me does, but only the kind of nostalgic Destiny part of me. I mean, I was delighted to see, like, to go to loads of new places, and that's their artists are just incredible, and the places they build are amazing. I
think maybe a more robust, kind of live event series would really help as well. Like, they just need stuff that makes it feel special when you go back and something's happening. Because they've softened things like, Iron Banner, which is a PvP event, so much, and they've moved the old faction system into the new faction rally thing, which, was riddled with exploits. Like, there hasn't been like, oh shit, I've got to go back. Iron Banner's on this week and there's loads of stuff I want.
True.
And that plays into the gear thing. So if the new gear system, the masterwork system, and there's also new cosmetic variants of armor sets that you can get by playing a lot, that kind of thing. If that stuff makes something like Iron Banner feel appealing, then those are the things that also keep people going back. So it's really interesting. It's interesting to watch them try and retain what was genuinely progressive about Destiny 2's design. Like, it was rare for an MMO sort of service game like this to respect your time so much compared to Destiny 1.
Yeah. That's what I really like about it as well. Because, I mean, Destiny 1 did demand so much of you, and if you could only devote a certain amount of time per week, you'd spend years trying to find, the best weapons, trying to see the best stuff.
Yeah.
Like, getting into a raid in Destiny 1 was such a mission to actually get up to that stage and get geared up for it.
And not just that, but you really needed specific things. Like, you really couldn't do certain bosses without certain gear and without even certain subclasses. Like, I've only ever played a hunter, and that meant that there are roles, specific things I had to learn to do for each of those boss fights, because literally can't do anything else, right? Like, if you are a warlock, you don't go in there to express your individuality of your character. You go in there because you have self-revive.
Yes.
Which was completely broken and is gone from Destiny 2 because it completely broke.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't break anything. Well, it broke a few encounters quite badly.
But it's hugely prohibitive to the type of encounters they could design.
Yeah, you couldn't decide that, I want to be a Stormcaller for this encounter, because your entire raid group would go like, you're wasting our time.
Right, yeah. For sure. And I think that it's interesting. I mean, I just see it as quite a straightforward action game with like quite a lightweight RPG progression system sort of around it. And that's fine. I think that's fine. But I think the expectation for Destiny 2 has been carried over from Destiny 1, when Bungie were saying and Activision were saying, this game will be the game you play for 10 years. And they went so heavy on the kind of persistence of it. And they went so heavy on the kind of, you're going to take this hero and you're going to take them through this epic journey for a decade. And people have, still hold them to that promise, rightly. And it's just not that type of game, I think. The game design is like.
So I do feel like I've been on an epic journey with this particular character, because I've had the same character since Destiny 1, and I will go back for the expansions. So the things it gets right, the things that are common to both games is it's a fucking brilliant shooter. Like, it is still way better than it has any right to be as an RPG, right?
Indeed.
But because it's, I would say, arguably one of the best pure shooters ever made in terms of gun design and feel and all the rest of it. It's also a brilliant setting. And those things haven't changed. Yeah. And I kind of willing to go back for those things. And that was true of the first game. The first game had those two things strapped to a deeply inconsistent RPG. And Destiny 2 gets those two things right, and it's now strapped to a too consistent RPG.
They can't win.
They genuinely can't.
They can't win.
It turns out, there is no magic formula for making people get helplessly addicted to your game forever.
I look forward to the new expansion, though.
Yeah, me too.
That'll bring me back. That's what it takes.
No, seriously. Well, I want to find out about the Space Wizards. I've written so many words for PC Gamer about
Cyrus,
what might be going on with the spacemen.
Yeah, and I still haven't done the raid, so we should raid.
Yeah, we should do the raid. We should. It's just, again, that's a symptom of people falling off. Like, that didn't happen with Destiny 1 until late, when people really had lost interest.
Yeah.
So in other news, there is a new Civ 6 expansion announced with most Civ expansions. Well, actually, maybe I'm wrong about this. This is an expansion that I assume is basically just the kind of spit and polish expansion that sometimes comes out about a year after a Civ game. It's called Rise and Fall. And its new system is the idea that your empire can enter golden ages and dark ages and go through ups and downs. But that was kind of in Civ anyway, right?
Yeah, I'm struggling to know what
that means.
The deal is, really, for the new expansion. I mean, these kind of quality of life expansions that come out for Civ are often quite good. But it doesn't seem to be adding, like, previous Civ expansions would add, like, culture. It would add, like, all culture, like art, systems for artists and stuff. And they could have been sometimes they were kind of dumb and, some were better than others, but you'd kind of latch onto that new thing that your civilization could do. And it seems like they've gone with a different direction for this one. It seems more like, they are changing the rhythm of the game, like the ebb and flow of a Civ campaign, maybe to solve a problem that I do have with Civ, is that it's like an endless clicky plateau that you get stuck on.
Yeah.
And after a while, you sort of like put all the gears in motion, your Civ gets its momentum going, and then you just sort of, you're incredibly passive in what actually happens for the next 100 turns.
Well, I suppose that's the thing, right? You either have that momentum after, let's say, 50 turns, and you continue, or you don't have it.
And then you just restart.
And you start again.
Yeah.
Like, so they've released, there's like a 4-minute, it's a really long trailer. And it's voiced by Sean Bean, I think. Or a man who sounds a lot like Sean Bean. And I think it's Sean Bean because Sean Bean manages to die about 3 minutes into the trailer.
That must be him then.
It is, yeah.
That's his entire job.
The spoilers for the Civilization Rise and Fall trailer and all things Sean Bean is in. And it's sort of, what it's trying to do is tell the story of like how all civilizations go through ebbs and flows and successes and failures. But it actually ends up basically exactly like every Civ trailer ever, where you follow one character throughout time, and culture, where they inevitably end up as president. Caveman to president. You know the caveman to president journey?
The classic arc, that classic character arc.
Well, or unless you play as America where you end up as a caveman Roosevelt, and that's just from the beginning of the game. Because Civ things. Yeah. I would love them to, so I kind of get what they're going at, but I think I would like to hear it explained in terms of practical
Yes,
changes.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Because, a system, like, essentially, since, the various Endless games and Stellaris, maybe less so Stellaris in some ways, but specifically actually Total Warhammer 2 basically fixed this campaign issue. And Warhammer 2 is the first, the game that for me has, really fixed it in terms of like, a genuine back and forth genuinely knowing over the course of a campaign that it is not it's better to persevere than restart. Right? Like if I was going to isolate a problem I have with grand strategy games, it's give me a reason why I should continue other than sheer time investment.
Yeah.
Right. Make it interesting to fail slightly because of what comes next. And that sounds like what they're getting at with this, where it's like, one of the things that they did mention is that if your civilization manages to enter a golden age after a dark age, it's a much better golden age called a heroic age, which I suppose it's like, the Renaissance simulator, basically. It's like
combo breaker.
Yeah.
Civ.
Exactly.
Come back even harder.
Like a comeback mechanic, basically. Like the blue shell, but for your entire, like the Renaissance was the blue shell of, Western civilization. I don't know what I'm talking about. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, we can only kind of guess at what it is. That's the trouble.
Sean Bean dies, that's all I know.
I like the idea that they would change the rhythm of the campaign. I like the idea that they wouldn't just give you another layer of numbers to manage, which is another thing I dislike about Civ. So a lot of the numbers, I remember talking about this on the pod with Tom Francis, like when Civ 6 came out, where everything just feels like you're massaging numbers that have very little to do with the concepts they're supposed to represent. Which is obviously always going to be a problem with these games where they have to use numbers to represent things. But the way that a lot of that stuff behaves was just kind of absurd, like having to detonate artists in particular arenas to get culture bonuses and things like that.
That's exactly what they did to Sean Bean.
It detonated for
they spent exactly one Sean Bean luxury resource.
Sacrifice a Sean Bean to start a golden age, a cultural golden age.
Yeah.
Civ trailers are always hilarious because they're well produced and they often show like massive scenes of war and, empires rising and falling. And there's, Leonard Nimoy used to narrate one of them, I think, didn't he, back in the day? And there's nothing at all to do with Civilization as a game. Civilization is, like, as far as, for the last couple of entries for me, has just been like one of those gardening sims where you click on the plants when they're ready. Like that's what it feels like to me. It's a very passive and not especially challenging experience.
It should just be like a long shot of like Sean Bean bellowing in the distance, I found a source of clams! And then a city growing in that place, and then Baba Yetu plays.
And you click on it and you convert the clams into culture.
Sean Bean.
In the amphitheatre.
And then Baba Yetu plays.
I mean, it's always nice, but I feel like it's become a way of like lulling you into a sort of stupor. And I know I didn't find that with like Civ 4 and some of the earlier games. Like it started with me with Civ 5, like 14 out of love with the series, where it stopped feeling like a struggle for resources. It stopped feeling like military conflicts were difficult and stressful and ongoing. and it just became like a very gentle, nice experience, which might be what they're going for, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like as soon as Civ 5 made good accessibility steps, but there's definitely a tension with Civ between it being a strategy game and a sort of Civ gardening game.
Yeah. And maybe that's how people like to play it.
Yeah, which is fine.
Which is cool. And, you boot it up on a Sunday afternoon and just sort of while it away, gently growing an empire, and that's a really pleasant, fun thing. I think I've just been spoiled by stuff like Endless Legends.
Yeah.
I think the other 4X games, particularly from Amplitude, have done an amazing job of really introducing new ideas to that genre, which felt very stale before. And I was quite disappointed in Galciv 3, for example, which felt like very much a rerun of the second game and didn't try and modernize or try and, innovate on that. Whereas Amplitude have done, like, consistently. I'm very excited about Endless Space 2 when that eventually kind of gains all its features and becomes a complete game.
Yeah, it's a good game. Like it had big problems on launch, and the code they initially sent out was very incomplete. But again, it's got great.
They tend to grow and grow, don't they? Yeah,
and it's very much a game. I know that sounds like a dumb thing to say. Like, it has narrative stuff and it has beautiful art and the rest of it, but I think one of the advantages that a lot of the space games tend to have is, and then actually one of the advantages that the Warhammer Fantasy setting has afforded Creative Assembly with the Total War series is that, unshackled from this kind of like celebration of history angle that Civ has and Total War has traditionally, they can be strategy games where factions and environments and so on can be carefully managed in order to create interesting strategic scenarios. Like, without wanting to bang on about it, Warhammer 2 really impressed me from that point of view, because it felt like they haven't approached this. Like, obviously they have a fixed pre-existing fiction to match, but it really felt like an interesting strategy game.
Yeah.
That, happens to have this particular fiction attached to it, rather than, what you were talking about earlier, which is Civ's sort of frustratingly inexact attempt to represent real historical things through a kind of mathematical system. Where neither thing really comes off for me. Like the pure maths of it aren't that interesting, but neither is it successfully evoking the miracle of the development of writing or something. It's just like, I'm getting an extra leaf icon.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I think it's part of that is like moving to their multi-hex city system, where you're pulling leaf icons and sort of tomato icons and sword icons out of the soil and sort of clicking, which, I mean, in fairness, that was part of Al Centauri and a bunch of other 4X games. And I don't know, something like, I felt like even visually Civ 6 was a step back from Civ 5 in terms of Civ 5 just being a very pleasant place to be if you're going to have that sort of like trance-like
It's lovely
experience.
fluffy clouds.
Yeah, just lovely little details, lovely little meadows and stuff. And Civ 6 was almost more garish and more simplified in its, art style. And I think there's loads of stuff that I just didn't really get to grips with it, because of that stuff. I'll give it a shot with the expansion, but I don't know. I mean, I might as well play Endless Legend again.
Yeah. I mean, traditionally it is this first expansion with a Civ game of any sort, including the non-Firaxis sort of 4X or grand strategy games, that makes them good, right?
That's true. Yeah, that is how it tends to go, isn't it?
Taking a long historical view. If this is just we fixed all the nonsense, we sacrificed one Sean Bean,
and everything is great now.
And the first game is
invented the heroic age.
Exactly.
Civilization.
Then good. Basically. On balance. Good.
Good news.
I don't hope it doesn't sound like I was dragging Civ too much. I just feel like it's got really meaningful competition now.
Yeah.
In a way that didn't necessarily.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's probably the big thing that's changed, hasn't it? Is that all these indie studios have come up making good 4X games, that are introducing new ideas to the genre.
Yes, and actually, if Civ wanted to evolve into this more casual, I don't say casual in the internet comment thread kind of way. I mean, just a more relaxed experience, and you can divide your brain time between whether I want a hardcore Amplitude game or I want more relaxed time with Civ, then cool. That's fine.
Yeah, it's good.
It'd be interesting, but it doesn't feel like a definitive statement has been made about that, really.
Yeah.
You're waiting for that. Waiting for that kind of sense of what it's supposed to be, so you can gauge it against that rather than against previous Civs or the competition or etc.
Agreed. Is that all the news? Is there anything else?
No. Well, so one news links into, I guess, what I've been playing, which is that, so we spent more than enough time on loot boxes and backlash and that kind of thing.
The drama of the moment.
However, whatever ends up happening from now on with that stuff, and I wonder if things like loot boxes and so on are a bubble that is in the process of bursting, for various reasons, reputational, in terms of real gain, legislation, those kinds of things coming in. The news came out, I think, a couple of days ago that this fiasco with Battlefront 2 has knocked $3 billion off EA's share price. Apparently, they are still a net gain for 2017 because they've had such a good year.
Yeah, they're huge.
Regardless of anything else, those ain't numbers people ignore, basically. So it's, I don't want to go over that particular subject too much, but I can't imagine this won't have an impact on how games are designed in the future. And arguably, maybe that will be a positive impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I hope so too. I do, however, I would really like to talk about Battlefront 2. Because
The game.
The video game Battlefront 2 by DICE, Motive and Criterion at the same time. And so I think at the last pod I was on, maybe I said that I wasn't planning on getting it. But Pip got it for me as a present.
Oh,
which is very kind of
nice.
her. And, this was the day after the Golden Joystick Awards. I did a lot of work on the Golden Joystick Awards this year, and it was a good experience on the whole, like a lot of, script writing and producing and all sorts of things. And that was the work of a couple of months. And the day after the Joystick Awards, I was desperately in need of just a good time with a game, like I was too wiped to paint or do any of the things I do to relax. Like I just had, for the first time in a while, a need to play something that wasn't going to challenge me too much.
Yeah.
And Battlefront 2 is great. And I've now played 30 hours of it, and I'm continuing to have a brilliant time with it.
Oh, good.
And there's lots of reasons for that. And so, and I would preface this by saying that I do think it's very expensive. I do think £55, which is what it costs, is a lot to spend on a game. And I don't know how you make a qualitative kind of price versus quality kind of statement. It's obviously been worth it for me because I got so much out of it. But it's not a perfect video game by any standards. I have no idea what I would give it as a score. But actually I do think it is an amazingly crafted thing in a lot of ways. And, as somebody who obviously loves that fiction, and loves that universe, it's been an opportunity to kind of revel in it in a way that very few games have ever offered, I think, simply because of how incredible it looks.
Yeah.
Like it might be the best looking game.
Wow.
One of them I've ever played from a technical point of view. Like in terms of both scale and detail, all at the same time in a multiplayer context. So to break it down a little bit, so there's a single player campaign. I heard 4 hours to run through the whole thing. I did it in about 6 or 7, but that's because I was playing on the hardest setting and really taking my time with it. And that's a really interesting thing because actually it's pretty good. Like, it is short and it has a big story to tell and lots of other kind of cameo things and kind of special levels and one-offs, even within that short running time. And it doesn't have time to fully unpack anything it really wants to say. Like it's got loads of relationships in it and that just sort of, it feels like watching a movie on fast forward. Like a level might be a big set piece, a couple of combat arenas, and then the next cutscene, the next thing. It feels like every level in it could be 4 times longer and you would have a game of about average length. But the resources expended to bring every single environment to life are mind-boggling, basically. And the number of them, and some of the single player levels are environments from the multiplayer. But it's not obvious until you play the multiplayer, basically. Some of them are using the same kind of environment art, but they're not exactly the same locations, like Endor or something like that. And some of them are lots of them are completely original for the, single player. But, I actually ended up having a really good time with it because it has reliably good acting and honestly writing a lot of the time. Some things don't quite work. Some things rely on you knowing stuff about Star Wars, particularly the new canon. Right. Like if you haven't been keeping up with like the Chuck Wendig books, which I actually hadn't been beyond like the first one that has been, since they, kind of started over with the Star Wars Expanded Universe. then there are things that are just mentioned and kind of moved past that you kind of need to understand. And it's because of that, like, every frame of that thing cost a shitload of money, and it really shows. But there's definitely something, you know, for as much as I would always champion good, elegant, small-scale game design, there is something quite nice to being treated to just the money show, where it's like, look what we can do with vast resources. And I think a meaningful investment in telling a different kind of story. There are definitely moments when it's like, okay, yep, this is Star Wars. But also, like, you know, it's, you know, an interesting new Star Wars adventure story, which has, great moments for a lot of the core cast of Star Wars, but also cool new characters, including a new female lead for Star Wars. It has some really good Leia moments, like, not to give too much away, but Leia gets more to do as a kind of general and as an action hero than she does in the movies, which is nice to see. And that's all really well done. That's something I'm specifically, like, happy to see, because it's not, when you talk about, like, run down the list of Star Wars sort of iconic characters, you know, you might expect to get the Luke Skywalker cameo and the Han Solo stuff.
Yeah.
But a game getting, Leia right and getting Lando right is kind of actually above and beyond what I expected from it. And some of the set pieces are just fucking crazy. Like, I don't know how they do some of the stuff they're doing with, like, the Frostbite engine. Like, you see, again, no spoilers for, like, I might talk about some of the locations, but it's not going to surprise people really, because Star Wars. You see the Battle of Jakku, which is, so Jakku is the planet from The Force Awakens with the crashed Star Destroyers and stuff on it.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of that is how there came to be so many crashed Star Destroyers. And fighting your way through that battle as it actually happens, and there's just capital ships falling from the sky everywhere, and this sense of this huge combat taking place all around you is, like, genuinely one of those sort of, I wouldn't say, if you're not interested in multiplayer, I think that's a bit of a risk to say that's worth the price of entry, because you're talking about 55 quid for an experience that is tops out at 6 hours, and that doesn't have tremendous replay value necessarily. But it is, you know, it was exactly what I needed at that point, was like, just take me on a space adventure. I'm stressed out. And the multiplayer side of it is super interesting, because it's, so it had a big patch today, which has solved a problem, and a hilarious problem, which is that it was completely unbalanced. And actually, in a way that has nothing to do with the unlock system, which I've barely mentioned, and that's because it barely factors. Yeah. You were completely right, incidentally, Tom, when you said that 40 hours to unlock every character thing was complete Reddit maths. It was complete Reddit maths. Yeah. That was cited that both Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader would take about 40 hours of play each, and I had both of them within 8.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's how wrong that was.
Sounds about right.
So the problem multiplayer had was that it was actually a traditional Battlefield problem, where it's far easier to be a defender than an attacker, where you're defending some positions and they have, like, a limited number of respawn tickets to take them. The way that was tuned was just basically completely busted. There was no, basically there's a lot of stuff in the game. There's a lot of maps. There are maps for the Clone Wars, the Galactic Civil War, and the new movie era.
Cool.
Each of which has the same classes, but new environments, character art, all of that stuff for all of them. That's kind of the investment just on that level. And each of those maps are massive, and a lot of them have multiple stages based on how far the attackers get. And because it was so rare that the attackers would get past the first thing on some maps, it meant that 30 hours in, I was still discovering stuff about those maps, which is weird. And this sums up my experience with Battlefront so far, is that because on paper, that's a bad thing. The game's really badly balanced, and basically one side never wins. And yet I ended up having a good time, because it felt more Star Wars-y the times when you would push through. And they've made some changes now. They've massively increased the number of tickets that attackers get for being successful, which is what it needed. Like, it was just, you ran out too quickly. But actually, like, one thing that helped me realize is, as someone who plays games competitively and would normally do a big frown about something like that, what I realized was that this is a multiplayer game, and ostensibly a competitive game, that I play 100% for the experience. And where it's more like, to put our different hat on, ironically, you know, in tabletop stuff, I'm capable of switching off my competitive side if I'm sufficiently into the story and the theme. And it's more about the feeling, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing, because I lose a lot. But, like, I found that with Battlefront, I'm okay to just switch my kind of I want to win brain off and get into the feel of it. And I couldn't do that with the first EA Battlefront game because I didn't enjoy it enough as a shooter, and it felt very random.
Yeah.
And the experience felt very inconsistent. And this is a much, much better shooter. The abilities are better designed and more transparent. There's a better sense of interplay between classes. It reliably produces genuinely good firefights. Its balance issue was because it was simply too hard. Basically, it was just a really simple thing. You didn't get enough tickets. So you'd have really good firefights, but eventually the attackers would just run out of steam. And the maths of that wasn't quite right. Like the amount of tickets you'd have to expend to take a position didn't match up to the amount you got for taking it. So you just ran out before you got to stage 2 most of the time.
Makes sense.
But yeah, it's a kind of experience. It's been like just reliably evocative. And I find that really interesting because I don't think people talk about shooter design, particularly multiplayer shooter design, that terms very often.
No.
The thing it reminds me a lot of is PlanetSide, which is a game where I could never play it competitively or like, well, I don't even mean competitively, effectively. Do you remember that sort of feeling of like, I'm
Definitely.
just here?
Yeah, definitely. You sort of make your own story out in the wild, out on the frontier and PlanetSide, don't you? You sort of like band up some buddies and you sort of try and take a base and, see how it goes. And if it goes badly, it's not about the actual taking the base. You're a drop in the ocean. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And obviously this is, this is 20-a-side games or 12-a-side for the Starfighter mode. One thing it does, really well is create that sense of scale. Now some of this stuff, again, is just like knowing anything about game development. You look at something like this and it's just like, holy shit. So like there's a map. Mos Eisley map should be the most basic thing in the world. Imperials are racing into the city to rout the rebels, and it's the urban combat map for that era to some extent. There's rooftops you can climb up and fight street to street and that kind of thing. And that's fine, and it looks very nice. But when when the match begins, the Empire is outside the city and they come down in landing craft and you charge into the city with your stormtrooper mates, and it looks great. It looks like squadrons of stormtroopers filtering into a city.
Yeah.
And there are just crowds of civilians that flee for doorways as you enter the city. And big Star Wars monster dinosaur things that rear up and bellow and kind of run away. And as soon as, within a few minutes of the battle starting, all the civilians have run. You can't shoot them. They're kind of not, they're not game elements.
Yeah.
They're purely cosmetic. But they have fled and run inside buildings but it creates this real cinematic sense to the start of the battle. It's from a competitive shooter design point of view, you roll your eyes at it. It's completely unnecessary, but it feels right. And when you are the rebels charging to the defense of the city and you're running into the crowd and the crowd's running through the street next to you, you feel like I'm a rebel soldier saving this town in this particular match of Mos Eisley. And that's not something a lot of shooters think about, I think.
Do you think if you just like Star Wars instead of like really loving the setting, it would sustain that kind of magic?
I don't think so. They're obviously quite lucky because it's a license that a lot of people really do love. I don't, I think there is a sense that like you have to want to climb into that place. Star Wars is one of those settings like Harry Potter, like, Lord of the Rings to some extent, or where people don't just like that setting. They want to get as close to experiencing inside of it as they possibly can.
Sure, yeah.
And I definitely have that with Star Wars. Like I run a role-playing group and it's been really nice playing Battlefront because it's helped me kind of imagine some things better.
Yeah.
Cause also I've literally, there's a map. One of the Battlefront maps includes a landed version of a ship that when I got the game, my player characters in the campaign I'm running were currently in the middle of exploring the inside of exactly that ship. And I'd never seen it accurately depicted anywhere. So I ended up, when I found that in a map, and I'd never seen it before because it's quite a late checkpoint in my battle that I'd never seen done successfully. Yeah. I ended up just walking around looking at it and taking notes for this experience that I was running on the side, because that's the nature of my investment in it, right? Like I'm kind of just whoa, this is the inside of a Venator class Republic era Star Destroyer. And that's, that has value to me, whereas I imagine if that doesn't have value to you, then again, that initial outlay is going to be super unappealing.
Yeah.
But, so those are all good things. The other thing is, I think it's actually a pretty good dogfighting game as well. So they've completely redone the, Starfighter Assault mode.
So is this Criterion's influence, is it?
Yeah, this is the thing Criterion made, was the Starfighter mode. And so, the flight model is completely different to Battlefront 1. So in Battlefront 1, you couldn't roll, basically. You were sort of on a plane.
Yeah.
Not in a plane. You were, and so you could go up and down, but your ship would always be level, basically. And then you had, on the F keys, the ability to do barrel rolls as like almost like a cooldown ability to shake a target lock. Some of the spirit of that remains. So like most ships have some way of mitigating a target lock. For like an interceptor, that might be a boost, like an afterburner kind of thing, or it might be countermeasures on a bomber. Or, for something like an X-Wing, it's just tanking it and having your droid fix the damage.
Right.
And those kinds of things. So there are cooldown abilities to consider. But you do have what I would describe as like arcade flight controls. So you can accelerate, decelerate, and roll. I even think in Battlefront 1, I can't remember this quite right, but I think I think acceleration was almost a binary thing as well.
Yeah, I can't remember it being analog.
And it's a throttle now with lower speeds enabling, snappier turns. It's not simulate. It's not Elite, but it is an arcade space dogfighting game.
Yeah.
With a kind of robust class system, and it uses the same attack and defend mechanic as the majority of, there's quite a few modes actually, including a small team mode and a hero mode and all this sort of thing. But it has the same basically attack and defend mechanic. And like a couple of weeks ago, I was playing quite a lot of Eve Valkyrie Warzone before that got swept up in CCP's closing, I think, of all of its VR studios. I don't know what the face of that game is now, actually.
Yeah.
But actually, like, I've spent a lot of time at Battlefront trying to figure out, like, to what extent do I love this because, oh, come on. No, it's X-Wings. And to what extent am I really enjoying this because it's genuinely, like, so not, dogfighting isn't necessarily for everybody. Like, it's not an experience that people, like, I know that World of Warplanes is the world of game that Wargaming has struggled the most to get people excited about. But I do. And I have thought about a lot of ways that they struggle and the way they can devolve into turning in circle fests and things like that. And it's not perfect. It's very lethal. Like, it's very lethal. You'll just die out of nowhere sometimes. But there is sort of, meaningful strategy. I'm going to put some GIFs, I think, in the show notes for this episode because I've been like recording moments and like, I've had really good chases and really good actual dogfights and actually both outflown people and been outflown in a way that suggests that it's actually quite a robust system.
Yeah.
And the maps are great. Like they, because they're, again, these multi-stage things, usually taking down the shield generators on big capital ships. And they, my favorite one, I think is a Galactic Civil War one called, Fondor Shipyard, which has so the rebels are basically raiding an Imperial shipyard and there's a Star Destroyer parked in like a kind of repair bay.
Yeah.
And it's got multi-stage from taking out Imperial corvettes at the start to, flying through the station to destroy to destroy reactor cores that are inside the station itself. And, it's just reliably cool from like, cause like when you play it a lot, you learn the rhythm of it. You know that Y-wings are best for the first stage. So you spawn as a Y-wing and you fly in and you often will be along another phalanx of other Y-wings and the cockpit, I sometimes will just play a game in the first person cockpit view, even though it is massively at a disadvantage. Yeah. Just cause it feels so like they've done a great job of like the way the sound balance changes. When you're in the cockpit, you can hear your own engines a lot louder and everything else comes over a radio rather than just being kind of around you.
Yeah,
like,
DICE are really good at it.
They're so good at this. Yeah. Like, and you just, you hear it and all of that movie perfect kind of, whenever you get those shots in the movies where it cuts back to like Gold Leader or somebody and you can hear the sound of the inside of his ship. It's like that, basically.
Right.
And then you can, do these sort of like torpedo runs on these corvettes, but then X-Wings are actually better for flying inside the ship. Because I think anyway, because they do more burst damage than a Y-Wing. Like a Y-Wing will trail after something and nuke it much more consistently. But a Y-Wing, an X-Wing can like overcharge its quad turbo lasers and fire all four at once, but only for a moment. But if you're having to fly through a thing and there are TIE fighters coming in the other way trying to stop you, then I prefer that as a kind of gambit, like in and out. and trying not to avoid feeding tickets away.
Yeah.
And it sort of ends with this kind of, and as the match progresses, more rebel, like capital ships come in, and it ends up with like a rebel capital ship taking on the Star Destroyer, and like this sort of tangle of a dogfight underneath the Star Destroyer and through the docking clamps that are holding the Star Destroyer in place. And it's just reliably like, fucking, this is cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Like, yeah. So My only, like, one of the only things I don't like about all of it is they have an interesting, so they have the hero system, which is much better. So in the first Battlefront, in order to get a go with an X-Wing or a hero character, you had to find a power-up scattered around the level.
Yeah.
And then phone somebody with the power-up who would then let you be Darth Vader or whatever.
Yeah. Really weird.
This new one has obviously the hero system, and obviously people talked about how you unlock them. But I think because you unlock them, there's a sense that you should be able to play it as any hero at any time. The way I would have designed this game is to divide the heroes into archetypes so that every era has its dark and light side force user.
Right.
And a dark and light side soldier character and a dark and light side basically rogue or scoundrel character. And have different heroes fulfill those archetypes for different eras. So you'd have, like Maul for the prequels, Vader for the original trilogy, and, Kylo Ren for the new ones. That's not how they work. They're all really different from each other and fill different roles. So that means that all of them are available in every map all the time. So like, Kylo Ren can completely show up during the Clone Wars and will all the time.
Right. Because
now that everything's based on the amount of points you've earned over the course of the match, you want to have as many heroes in play as you can as a team. So the people who are the first 4 people to earn enough to play as a hero are going to pick all 4 heroes, however many are available. So that means that if you're playing a, First Order versus Resistance game, you will see Yoda run into battle alongside a much younger Luke Skywalker, alongside Rey, alongside,
well, okay.
Yeah, up against Boba Fett, the Emperor, Kylo Ren, Darth Vader, Darth Maul, and it does get a bit like Ultimate Battle of Ultimate Destiny.
Yeah.
There's sort of an element of like, I say this only from a purist point of view, like, this is a bit daft, and it's led them to some really weird places in terms of the themes of the maps. Because they've said the reason there isn't like a skin system yet is because they have to be very careful with how they treat the source material.
Right.
So that you can't unlock like,
no hats for them all.
Yeah, you can't unlock like Happy Christmas Darth Vader, or, beachwear Palpatine or something.
No.
But what this does mean is that for the Clone Wars maps, they've divided it into, rather than being like Empire and Republic or something like that, it's light and dark. So all of the evil characters are on the battle droid side in the Clone Wars maps, which means that Darth Vader fights for the battle droids.
Right.
Even though he literally fought in that.
Yeah, on the other side.
For the other one.
Yeah, that's really weird.
It is really weird. The weirdest one is Boba Fett, who is literally a clone of, he's the same. Yeah. And he's on the bad guy side because that's like,
I know
fighting infinite clones of his dad.
Yeah. Man, that's some therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Some therapy.
So that's a bit fucked. I really like a purist mode for all of the modes actually where, but it does lead to, I guess the final thing I say, and hopefully this has not been mega boring, but I was just interested in, I have not seen anyone unpack the things that this game has done right. Because it's generated such controversy.
Consumed by the loot box stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Which has not really impacted my enjoyment of it whatsoever, partly because the loot boxes have been abruptly completely switched off. So, not the loot boxes, sorry, the microtransactions.
Yeah.
So I've just gotten my upgrades at the speed at which I've got them, and some of them feel like, oh, that seems a bit bullshit, but I haven't minded because I'm in the Star War.
Yeah, okay.
And I guess to say, I don't want to dwell on that too much. So this is hero battle mode, like 4-on-4, everyone plays a hero kind of thing. And it's explicitly silly, like it has an announcer who talks about the fact that this doesn't make any sense. Like, it's designed to be weird that all these characters are mashed up. But there is a brilliant thing that happens reliably and is one of the best unintentional visual gags I've seen in a while in a game like this, where by default, the heroes available, there's 4 heroes available for each faction by default. And then everyone unlocks a few because you get them so many points so quickly. But the default 4 for, the baddies are Bosk, the lizard man in the yellow jumpsuit.
Oh yeah.
Boba Fett, Darth Maul and Kylo Ren. And everybody unlocks Darth Vader first. Like, no, I'd love to see who's like, I'm going to unlock Palpatine. Everyone goes for Vader first, right?
Yeah.
And what this means, and at the beginning of all these modes, whenever this match starts, it does like almost, not like a wrestling intro, but like a kind of walk-in for each team.
Okay.
And so the rebels will walk in and it always looks like, even if it's, anachronistic, it always looks kind of cool because it'll be like Yoda and Luke and Rey and Lando normally walking in and then the lightsabers get ignited. But all of the Sith look quite samey. They're all dudes in black with red lightsabers. And Bosk is always there. So it's always like Darth Vader, Kylo Ren, mall, like walk in, they're all like black robes, lightsabers ignite, and a big yellow lizard man is also there.
I'm surprised he's in the game. Why did they choose of all the heroes?
I don't know why Bosk is there.
Yeah. Why not put in they should put in the blue elephant who plays jazz.
Max Rebo.
He should definitely be a character if he's not already in.
He might be. And for some reason that makes me laugh every single time. There's something powerfully awkward about it. It's like, everyone has the friend who is the Bosk in the big,
Oh,
like,
bless.
Like,
what does he do then? What's his thing?
He sets traps. So he can create proximity mines. He can throw a gas grenade, and he has like an ult which gives him thermal vision and a grenade launcher, which is fucking great against Yoda.
Right.
That's the hard counter to a Jedi, really. It's just like poison gas and a grenade launcher,
yeah, makes sense.
Which makes sense. I've had some moments with that. Like Boba Fett spends a lot of time flying around like a prick. And Rey has the ability to do this mind trick, which reverses people's controls if you use it on a player.
Oh, no.
And the best game-winning kill I've ever got was mind tricking Boba Fett and he flew into the sea by accident, which is remarkably close to how he dies in the films.
That's very true. There wasn't a giant sand gob to swallow him up this time.
No, it was just like mind trick, and he's just like, I've forgotten how to be up. Sploosh. It was great.
That's excellent.
Yeah. So that's my Battlefront rant. Like I said at the top of this bit, I don't know if I could say that it would be worth 55 quid for everybody or even anybody. I am quite excited that all the maps and new characters are going to be free.
That's cool. That's
neat. Like that for me helps justify the loot box thing, even though the loot box thing isn't paid for anymore because of a phone call from a Disney man. It's still a lot of money and it's not a fantastic game. It's just like, it's a real strong 7 out of 10 for somebody who loves that setting.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and strangely, it's just been like one of the most consistently enjoyable games I've played for a while because it's exactly what I needed, basically.
No, that's really good.
Yeah. So there you go. Basically, also, I just wanted to say that God, the effort that goes into making something like this is absolutely astonishing. Like, these business models can really shaft both games and players and developers when they change the narrative about a game completely. And I hope that when the dust settles, there will be a nice article about the environment art in that game and what a giant bitch it must have been to pull off. You know what I mean? Like someone deserves a medal. It's just probably not only the business side.
It's interesting to see EA do that multi-studio thing that Ubisoft have kind of perfected over the years to give different studios different bits of the game and have them cohere at the end in that way.
Yeah, it is like, cool. And it has apparently worked. Like obviously there are constraints and stuff and a licensor to work with, but you don't get the impression that the loot boxes and all that stuff were the idea of any one of those studios specifically. All of them have made either the space fight game or the story or the multiplayer shooter as best as they can within the confines of what it is. And then there's this system strapped to the front of it that has just, fucked them over in a huge way. And that's a huge shame, specifically for the people who spent all that technical expertise on creating this thing.
Yeah.
What have you been up to, Tom? I've rambled about Star Wars too much.
I bought a Steam Link in the Steam sale.
And it was mega cheap.
It was super cheap. They were selling for $5 and you got to get it shipped from America, so there's an extra sort of $10 attached to that, but still, it normally sells for like 40 or something. And what this is, it's, if you're not aware, it's a small box that you plug into your telly, and it streams your PC to your TV. And it's basically a way of just couch gaming with your PC, hopefully is convenient. I've been really impressed by it so far. It's worked really, really well.
Oh, cool.
I would say that, I would caveat that by saying you want to be able to plug it into an Ethernet cable.
Do you use a home plug or anything like that? Or?
Yep, I use a home plug. So these are brilliant if you've got like a house or a big flat and your PC is miles away from your router. You might already have one of these, but just in case you don't, like it's basically just, it fits into your plug sockets and beams wirelessly, but very efficiently from one device to another. So you can plug one in your front room and plug one in your back room, and it saves you from running like an Ethernet cable all the way from your front room to your back room. Yeah. Basically. You can plug that. That's what I've done. So I've plugged my Steam Link into one of those in the wall and it works flawlessly. It's just, doesn't drop any frames. It's really, really good, not just as a way of playing Steam games, but you can close down big picture mode and then you're just streaming your desktop to your telly. So I've used it to watch BT Sport and other apps, and you can watch YouTube on there, and it's a lot more efficient and easier to use than, a lot of built-in apps for your PS4 and
what do you use to actually control your PC from the couch?
So, the Steam Link has a USB port in it, and I plug, a cable and an Xbox One controller into that. So you don't have to have it plug, your controller plugged into your PC. Actually, the Steam Link handles all of that for you. And it's got a HDMI cable that goes from the Link to your telly. And I don't think it has any other options, so you need a HDMI port to make that work. But that's it. It's a little efficient thing that just gets on with the job. It can work wirelessly, and it works if you're like streaming TV and stuff like that and streaming pictures, but it does drop frames for me when I try to play games. And that would be fine for stuff like Divinity Original Sin 2, which is one of the things I've been playing with it. But when I started trying to play Dishonored 2, for example, you really, really want that Ethernet cable in there to give you that consistent frame rate. But I've been really, really impressed by it. And I think it's amazing how good games look on your telly, because it also fixes a lot of stuff. When it comes to, I've often plugged my PC into my TV via HDMI cable, but the image quality is all fucked up and it just doesn't seem to look right. I end up fiddling with my settings loads and trying to adjust output modes on my PC and stuff. And the Steam Link just does it all. It just sorts it out and it just works and looks perfectly, looks as it does on your monitor. And that's just as a solving a problem, essentially. It just does a brilliant job of it. And what it's done for me is it's changed the way I look at my entire Steam library now, because I'm thinking about things that I can play on the couch and stuff that has good controller support. And so hence downloading Dishonored 2 again, a game that was ridiculously I bounced off like whenever I've tried it. I tried it in the summer, tried it when it came out last December, and I've just not like cracked it. But now, just playing it earlier on the couch, I've been having an absolutely amazing time with it. The controller support is very good for Dishonored 2. And it almost lets you, as you've mentioned before, Chris, like lets you do stuff with leaning an analog control that you can't necessarily do with mouse and keyboard. That works really well. Divinity Original Sin 2 has fantastic controller support. In fact, when you plug a controller in, it even like resizes all of the text boxes because it assumes it knows you're using a telly. So everything is completely readable. Dialogue screens like are blown up to the size of, the height of the entire screen. So everything is, all the fonts are blown up, and it's really, really well designed pad game for such a huge, dense RPG. I was delighted to see that they'd put that kind of support.
Man, that's great.
That's really, really good. And that's my Christmas sorted, basically. I'm just going to be lying sideways on the couch, solving dilemmas for people and setting people on fire with, lizards, giant lizard men.
That's in Divinity, right? Not Dishonored. I'm trying to figure out what
Oh, both.
Right.
But Divinity.
Yeah, man, now I regret not getting one. Pip said, should we get one? Was it really cheap? And I was like, I don't know if we would actually use it. And because I think I had it in my head that they were not good for some reason. But maybe I'm just wrong.
I don't know. Xander Kelly, PC Gamer, he wrote a piece for us last year when he got one, and he absolutely loves his, and he's had a brilliant time with it, and it's just worked flawlessly for him as well. I think I would say again, relying on wireless is going to be more inconsistent. But if you've got one of those plug sockets with Ethernet, for me, it's worked flawlessly. It's been really, really, really good.
That's great.
And it's amazing to just see 60 frames per second PC quality graphics on your telly. And I've got a PS4 and I play with it all the time, and it is just like, whoa, suddenly it does feel like a premium experience.
So you get sound through the PC speakers?
Yeah, it does all that. Yeah.
Through the HDMI, I imagine.
Yeah, so the HDMI puts all the sound automatically through your telly, which is another annoying thing that you have to contend with when you're plugging a PC directly into it.
Although I suppose that makes it, this is such a techie nerd question, but does it have any other audio outs?
Well, it's purely HDMI.
Right. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to have an optical audio out to your surround sound system or something.
Yes, that's a good thing to consider, actually. Yeah. So you unless you find, I don't know if converter plugs even exist for that sort of thing. Probably not.
No. Maybe you get something that goes from out the TV, but I doubt it.
Yeah. Maybe some of them, if they go to the telly, maybe the HDMI will go in, and then, I don't know. It's definitely worth checking if you've got that type of setup. The Steam Link page on Steam is quite informative when it comes to showing you what all the output things are, what the sockets are, as you'd expect. But yeah, it's been really good. I'm looking forward to playing PC games on my couch forever. Now.
Is that sale over now?
The sale is over.
Shit.
So it's gone back up to full price.
Yeah, it'll go down again, won't it?
Yeah, plus, they do a Christmas sale, don't they, on Steam? And I would guess that...
At this point, I just assume there's always a sale.
Yeah.
We had Halloween, then Black Friday.
And there'll probably be Boxing Day one or Christmas Day one or something, weren't there?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But keep an eye on it. I mean, I was annoyed actually. I was going to buy Mad Max and I forgot, and that was going for £5, and that would have been a perfect Steam Link couch game.
Yeah.
So this is how I'm looking at my Steam library now, how I'm looking at the store.
That is a perfect sideways game.
Yeah.
Apparently it's better than a 7 out of 10. I always assumed it was.
Yeah, I hear that a lot actually. I mean, apparently it's got a really, really lovely world that's worth driving around. It's really fun to just drive around it, even if the rest of the, mechanics are quite derivative. There's lots of crafting systems and boring combat. But yeah.
That doesn't matter when you're sideways.
Yeah, exactly. If you're sideways, go around a desert, be Mad Max, that's awesome.
Yeah. Everything's better when you're sideways.
It's very true.
Yeah.
So that's been my PC gaming recently. I've not played many new games actually. A bit of Assassin's Creed Origins, but I've already fallen out of love with that after about 7 hours.
Right.
I immediately hit a wall with it and it's like, you look at the map and it's like, oh my god, that's like the rest of my life.
That's the danger. When you are that sideways, then you can go the rest of the way to sleep.
Very true,
easily.
yeah. I just think, I'd rather get into Dishonored 2, a game that is surely going to reward me much more for less time.
Yeah, and yes, yeah. Although actually, from what Alex and Tom have said, I think Origins has charmed. Was that a game you were playing through the link to the big?
Oh, yeah, it's a good point actually. I tried to play it through the link, but it gets very funny if you're not playing a Steam game.
Aha.
That's definitely worth mentioning. It's, so.
That is worth mentioning because my thoughts were just 100% Star Wars at this point.
Oh, yeah.
It's an Origin game.
Yeah. I need to test that a little bit more because, it might have just been that Uplay and maybe Origin games work better with this. Obviously, you could start up the game and stream it to the link, so the game will appear on your screen completely fine. It's just whether or not it will recognize your controller and whether or not it will kind of like automatically change all the controls to a controller, which is the problem I had with Origins, where it was weird actually. I started playing Origins and it sort of thought that the controller was a mouse, so you could move around the cursor with like the right stick, and then like left click was on right trigger, and I don't know at what point either device decided to do that. But that was how it was. So yeah, definitely be wary of that. I even tried launching it via Steam. You know how you can launch non-Steam games in Steam. So I tried adding it just in case that would somehow help it along. But no, that wasn't so good.
That's a shame. That's probably worth bearing in mind as well.
Yeah, for sure.
What you're playing on play.
It did make me want just like a Genero device that just does that, but without the kind of partisan Steam integration. Just a kind of third-party interface that lets you do this, that looks a lot like Steam Big Picture, but doesn't tie you into that infrastructure and lets you play any game you want.
Do you think those will be your Christmas games then, given that we're winding down? Because there's not much else to come out this year, is there?
Nope, it's pretty much done. I think Destiny 2, Curse of Osiris will take up some time. Probably hit that quite hard for a couple of weeks. I don't expect there to be a huge amount of stuff really in terms of like hours to get through content. Yeah. Because they tend to be fairly light on content, but give you lots of hooks for returning. After that, like Divinity Original Sin 2 is probably the big one I want to hit more because it feels like there's so much that game that is cool and exciting. Yeah, it's great. It's given me that I've been playing quite a lot of it, while I was until Star Wars came along and made me not have to think thoughts. But it has given me a bit of the old big town fear. Yeah, that's certainly what I've been having with it. I thought it didn't do that. I think we may have even said on a podcast previously that I thought it maybe avoided it by feeling so replayable. But now the more time I'm spending with it, and the more it feels like a big enormous thing, the more I want to make sure I saw everything, or you know what I mean, like gave everything a fair shake. So I'm really struggling to like move on when I should probably move on, and sort of worrying about going too far down a quest line and changing things, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, definitely. I'm still stuck on the first island, and I gather that is just like a tutorial bit basically compared to the size of the rest of the game. Yeah, like I'm basically at the end of the first island, like I can leave, but I now have that thing of like, should I see everything? Yeah. Oof, gosh. Yeah. But it is also great. So there's that. Hooray. Tom. Hello. I think we should do some questions. Let's do it. From where? Listeners who have emailed them in. That's where they come from. Okay, and I'm sick of this charade. We finally solved the mystery. Yeah, they don't come from questions. That's absurd. Infantile nonsense. Marsh Davies. Was it Marsh who started it? Probably. Okay. Everything else on this podcast was him. Let's all blame Marsh. It's not podcast is him. Marsh. Anyway, just a little bit of pent up. I just need to get the thing off my chest. Also, I live in his house. Please let me live here.
Anyway, our first question comes from Jeff. I don't know why I exclaimed Jeff, but I did. Who writes, is PUBG a roguelike? And the answer is probably yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to be the case. I was like, actually.
Yeah. Lots of repeated restarts. There's just enough persistence in the gear you're earning to sort of like sometimes
Normally I'd sort of do a face is something else genre type questions, but actually thinking about it, it's a game where death is, for the sake of a session, permanent, where it's fundamentally about starting with nothing and acquiring gear in order to defeat a succession of enemies.
Yeah. And it doesn't have procedurally generated terrain, but it has altered terrain with each playthrough, thanks to the
landscape of gun attachments.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's quite, the only thing that is multiplayer really, that's sort of the difference between, other roguelikes, but you could still say it's
also,
interesting.
It's not, it depends on how pedantic you want to be, it's not technically grid based.
No, that is true if you want to go all the way back to Rogue.
Yeah. It's as much a roguelike as most things that carry
we call
that
roguelikes these days. Yeah, very true. Yeah, good shout.
A good observation. I don't know who that helps.
That's genre wang.
That is genre wang. And I'm amazed that isn't already a phrase.
Yeah, well, we could make it work.
Yeah. Rotate the boards. It's time for John. John writes, do a film podcast. As a patronizer, I would like to hear this. Yours, John. That's a good idea, I think.
I think it's fun to write films and stuff. Yeah, we'll think about it.
Yeah. It's so at the moment, I can't do any more podcasts than I currently do. Yeah. No one wants that.
It's a question for the new year, I would say.
Yes. If we've got quite a lot on for a relatively small number of people. Mm-hmm. One-off movie specials wouldn't necessarily be a
nice idea.
Bad idea.
Star Wars.
No one wants to hear that. Actually, though, maybe.
Just floating it out there.
Maybe. Might even get... I just had a cool idea.
Interesting.
Right, yeah. It's a good suggestion. Yeah, do let us know if this particular thing should be interesting. Given that we've established that this is a network dedicated to PC games, specifically the console game Bloodborne, miniatures games, and ITV's television series Poirot, there's no
through line here, is there?
Yeah, we've decided we don't know what content is.
Yeah, we just talk.
We just talk about things. So if there's something you'd like us to talk about that you think you'd enjoy listening to, then let us know. We do have, actually on this note, I have already teased this to the community, so this isn't news. We do have something very different coming very soon, which is the first ever one-off Crate and Crowbar Dungeons and Dragons live play podcast special.
CNC does D&D.
Yeah, CNC D&D. I didn't really like CNC does D&D because it sounds slightly kinky.
All right with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, you're probably right. But nonetheless, we're doing this as a Christmas special. We've had people suggest in the past that they'd like to hear this, and obviously, God knows there are a billion D&D podcasts in the world, and a lot of them are excellent, which is terrifying. I don't know if we have the bandwidth, if that pipe's big enough to stuff so many goblins in it. But a Christmas special that will probably be like 6 hours long.
I look forward to this. We're doing it this Sunday, aren't we?
We are doing it this Sunday. We've done a little teaser session, basically for our benefit, to make sure everyone's up to speed and things. And
we did a prologue.
Hopefully it will be fun. I am DMing it and I've written, obviously, created the scenario, not written the story because it's open, man. Make your decisions. Find your own truth. But it will involve, Tom Senior, Tom Francis and Philippa War in their Dungeons and Dragons alter egos, which are definitely not what you expect.
No, it's gone some interesting directions.
I enjoyed the speculation about who everyone's playing.
Yeah.
And everyone has been wrong.
100%.
100% wrong.
All the ones I've seen on Discord have been wrong.
Yeah, which is interesting. I will say this. Someone made an image of someone sweating over the decision whether to press the wizard button or the bard button for whoever my player character would be.
Yeah.
And I would say, that's completely right. So good job, Kane.
That was good.
Who made that? Was it Kane? If it wasn't Kane, sorry to whoever made it. It was very good.
Sounds like a thing Kane might do.
Yes. But no, that's you got that to look forward to. I don't know exactly when we're going to put that up yet. It will be over Christmas. So, yeah, because it's a festive theme. Our next question comes from Duncan, who writes, Dear Kroot and Taudar, I may have crossed over into your other podcast there. I'm a gamer of a certain age. Okay, 53. So my Twitch skills are non-existent, or at least I Twitch, but not necessarily when it's ideal. Which is very much a dad joke, Duncan. Congratulations.
I liked it.
Yeah, it's good. Anyway, rather than rambling on like an older person, when I'm not playing games on easy for the story, hello Mass Effect and Skyrim, I found that I now play games for relaxation, my current favourite being Banished, and honourable mentions for Subnautica and Submerged. Do you ever find yourself playing wind-down games that require minimal interaction and are just beautiful to watch? Kind regards, Duncan. I want to do this out because we kind of touched on this episode, actually.
Yeah.
Like, this is what... I feel like this is... We sort of talked about this in a slightly pejorative context with Civ, and its evolution into a kind of toy, I think.
Yeah.
But it is also kind of what I've gotten out of EA's big space person shooty bang time is just the spectacle, and it's not relaxing. It's very loud, but it's sort of just, I don't play it to worry about things like game balance and what it all means for the industry. I play it because I just love the sound a TIE fighter makes.
Yeah. That's a great reason. And it's interesting with Civ because maybe my expectations for it are wrong. Maybe the design, idea behind Civ now is to create that gentle, lovely, Sunday experience, and that they've done a really good job of doing that, but I'm frustrated because I want more of a challenge and I want things that it isn't really setting out to do.
Yeah, because it's not like, I do find that I tend to pick, if I am at a neutral stress level, I'll pick games for myself that are stressful. Like I'll play something competitive, or I'll play an RPG with lots of hard decisions to make, or something like that. But as work and life gets stressful sometimes, there's nothing wrong in a game as toy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
there are some games that we do this very, very well. Stuff like Proteus, which is, you just wander through a landscape and it procedurally generates soundtrack based on stuff that's kind of flying off around you, and you're sort of causing it and you're sort of, just receiving it. And there are quite a few kind of meditative experiences like that indie developers particularly have made. But yeah, you're right. Even in the mainstream, there are, I don't know how I think of them really. Just kind of brain dead games. I think of Dynasty Warriors like this. I remember writing a Why I Love the PC Gamer about the brilliance of mindless games that are just so dumb. You just go out and hit stuff, and that's just really satisfying. And it is that toy thing. You've had a good interaction for 20 minutes. One Finger Death Punch. That's another good one. Just these little kind of time filling games that are just take your mind off things and are actually very nice and entertaining in their own way.
Yeah, that's something that like mobile phone games do as their primary business model all the time.
Yeah.
It's just something to click on, thing to fiddle with. And that can be pretty bad. It can be good. Those are the two things it can be. It's another one of them neutral takes from me, I'm afraid.
What turns a man neutral?
Why am I like this? But no, I'm getting a lot of that recently. I think, when things calm down, over Christmas, it'll be back to Divinity and it'll be back to
the harder stuff.
The hard stuff. We're getting them hard skeleton decisions made.
And gritty dice rolls.
Yeah.
I love
it. Next question comes from Marius, who writes, Dear Common and Uncommon. I don't usually play loot-based games, but I've just taken the plunge into Destiny 2 and its complex systems of colours and numbers and learning to invest my sense of self-worth and my gradually increasing power level. What is the most excited you have been about a number ticking upwards in a game? Cheers, Marius. So I thought about this in total silence for a bit, as did you, Tom. I don't know where you ended up with it.
We'll find out. We'll find out in a moment.
When you thought about it a bit more. So
yes.
I realised that, numbers going up is nice, but the most excited Destiny 1's trial system, which Destiny 2 has as well, but it hasn't been quite as successful for me, where originally in Destiny 1, in order to get to the lighthouse, which was its exclusive social area that will be in the expansion, I think that's coming out next week.
Cool.
In order to get there, you had to go 9 wins and 0 losses in a row in Trials of Osiris, which was the most hardcore PvP experience in the game. And me and 2 friends did it exactly once. Going 90, you got a special emblem for it. It really was like at that time, particularly the most difficult PvP challenge in the game. And in most games, really, you have to beat the matchmaking odds that spectacularly.
Yeah.
I love the little note in the lore that that's kind of the purpose of it. they're trying to find guardians that defy probability.
Yeah, cool.
And so that's a little bit of nice design and storytelling. And watching that number creep up was great because it combined success. Obviously, it's great to win, but every time you won, you got agonizingly closer to the big win that really matters.
No, I know.
But so every time you win, losing matters more if it happens. And when you get to 8-0, having the actual courage to play that 9th game is almost the hardest thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Because there is a gulf of utter heartbreak between an 8-1 result and a 9-0 result.
Damn.
You know, it's like, it fucking matters because it takes a long time to get there. These are, multi-round games in each case, right? This is that 8-0 result is the product of at least an hour and a half of play and without making a mistake. And then you have to do it one more time. And it's when we did it, that 9th game was actually not that bad. We got, one of those kind of not lucky, but one of those ones where it wasn't the most terrifying experience. We won the first round and then you got that kind of oh, we can do this. And, my friend, I was playing it with 2 people, both called Matt, because I have 2 of every friend, like Noah. And, that's true. That's not true at all. There's so many Toms in the Ark.
It's true. We're taking over the Ark.
But one Matt Lees actually, of Shut and Sit Down and Cool Ghost and stuff, didn't actually realize that there was a special reward for going 9-0.
Oh, right.
Get through that entire thing completely blissfully unaware of the stakes. And me and other Matt were shitting ourselves. And it was watching it tick up to 9-0, and the special thing was just, obviously it's more than numbers. The number just represents an achievement at that point. But I don't know, maybe it's not the spirit of the question because the question's kind of about grinding and stats and things, but it was really it was just pure feelings, pure triumph and bellowing and dancing around the living room, still wearing my wireless PlayStation headset so that everyone could hear me dance.
Yeah. Good times.
Exhilarating.
Good Destiny. I would answer with Final Fantasy VII. And the problem with making numbers go up in Final Fantasy VII when you hit things is that there is a limit to it. And the limit is 9,999 damage with any given hit. And if you wanted to beat the best stuff and do it in the most time efficient way, you have to find ways around that limit of 9999 damage. And the way you do it, there's an ultimate summon called Knights of the Round, but it takes fucking forever. It's 10 minutes long. It takes 10 minutes. Loads of, the enemy is sent into an abyss, and giant enormous knights come and hit the enemy for 10 minutes. That's the summon. It's the best summon in the game. But what if your one hit with a sword for one of your dudes does 9,999 damage, and then you put quad slash on them? That means they do 4 hits in 10 seconds. Suddenly you're up to nearly 40,000 damage. But you've only got that one piece of material. So the next person along in your line with your team of 3, you give them Mime, and Mime copies quad slash, and you make sure they're powered up so they go in and do almost 40,000 damage. And then if you level up a materia enough over time, it duplicates, it splits into 2. And so you've got 2 Mimes. And now you've got a chain, baby. 40,000 damage.
Yourself a damage stew.
40,000 damage, 40,000 damage. And you just do, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of damage in 3 minutes. And that's the secret pro strat of Final Fantasy VII. That's how you beat all of the best stuff.
That's the final form of number weighing.
That's right. And that's the nerdiest I've got with making numbers go up in games, or not go up. Stay at 9999, but repeat in the most time efficient manner until everything is dead.
Good. That's a good maths story.
Oh. Lovely maths. What a game.
Oh. Our next question comes from Tom, who writes, "Hi gang, I'm becoming increasingly restricted to gaming on my laptop on the sofa rather than locking myself away in my study with a desktop. This has changed the kinds of games I'm able to link sync time into, with a greater focus on those that don't require any kind of sound and we play with just trackpad and keyboard. Any ideas of games that might be suitable for this? I've sunk hundreds of hours into The Binding of Isaac, but really want to find something else to try. Thanks and keep on podding." Tom.
Yeah, I thought of Darkest Dungeon. That's a good one.
That's a very good suggestion for this.
Because you can kind of glance down at it. It's not going to necessarily consume all your attention, and you don't need the sound, and everything's very easily explained on the on the screen.
And if you like Binding of Isaac, that means you like going down a really deep hole and failing. And that
Darkest
is
Dungeon's perfect.
Darkest Dungeon.
80 Days is another nice one. Again, it's got nice sound design to it, but it's not essential to it. And the trackpad, there's no kind of time pressure to click on things. It's just a kind of adventure story game, which is beautifully evocatively written, lovely world. And what was it? What's the other one I thought of? I can't remember.
FTL?
Now. FTL. There you go. That's a good one.
I feel like everyone's played FTL, but you haven't. That's a really good choice.
Yeah.
Invisible Ink.
Yeah.
This is going to be just like a greatest hits of like indie strategy games we have loved.
Yeah.
But
anything with the pause mechanic, anything with turn-based.
Yes.
Is good.
Depends what kind of laptop you've got.
Yeah.
But if you have a laptop with a big enough screen, I would definitely recommend, things like Pillars of Eternity and Divinity for this.
Okay.
Like that's kind of relies on your ability to play comfortably a game with a lot of text. But actually those are perfect, like, cause they have nice sound and music and some voice acting and stuff, but you don't need it.
No,
those are text experiences first and foremost.
And you're always pausing on spacebar whenever you need to move around.
Yeah. So if you're desiring something a little bit like a big game, like a substantial game, then I'd say that's
good shout.
A good bet. Divinity as well. If you will run Divinity 2, then that's a good choice.
Yeah.
I guess, yes, it does depend on the kind of laptop. Also, otherwise, actually, I know, like I didn't play very many games when I was at university because I was so busy, but, N was a perennial for me, like the original N, and I know N just got a new N.
The N++ now is up to, and that's out on PC.
That's very easily just a arrow keys and spacebar kind of thing.
Very, very good.
Pretty rad.
Yeah,
pretty different if, you know, you're not just looking for a ruminative, thinky time, but indeed a running around jumpy time.
Super Meat Boy's very good on WASD controls as well. I found.
If you like your Edmund Macmillan.
Yeah. If you, exactly.
There's loads of good games basically.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Good. Our next question comes from, David, who writes about Assassin's Creed Oranges. Tom mentioned his discovery of his own sacrilege, killing sacred crocodiles in AC Oranges and then Bayek learning that they were sacred. Do you think they could just adjust this mechanic to make poaching illegal and it gains anger from a faction? Killing in self-defense doesn't count. Spawn a devout croc lover behind you when you kill a sacred creature to avoid the no one saw me do this so it's okay thinking. The faction hassles you when angry, like adding Far Cry 2 outposts, but keeping them happy means you have fewer resource sources. I love the idea of giving actions consequences instead of being filler in the world, but angry factions could be annoying. Thoughts, David? So I kind of think the final part of this is the kicker, which is that, so actions having consequences is all fine and good, but games like AC and Far Cry revolve a lot around the resource mechanic. And if you're telling the player that if you want the good hat, you're going to get some of that crocodile tail, that sounds wrong, then you are just making the player annoyed, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think this rarely works well, this type of faction system. Like, first of all, it's quite difficult to communicate to the player why a faction is angry with you and how to fix it. And this happens all the time with like Oblivion's guards and Skyrim's guards and stuff. Like, you know, it's so arbitrary when, you know, they'll attack you and when they won't in some circumstances, and it can be quite hard to tell why something has gone wrong. And if, you know, as you say, if the game's encouraging you to kill crocodiles and then you do it in the wrong, you know, slightly the wrong bit of the river, you know, this is how games like look at these things. It'll be like, have you killed it in this sector? So you could kill a crocodile over here, but then kill a crocodile 20 feet away and the faction will anger there and they won't over here. You know what I mean? It's that kind of binary way that games tend to look at this stuff. It doesn't really work well with that type of faction mechanic. Yeah. The other thing as well is that games like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed Oranges, I actually tried to say Origins then, and it just came out like that.
Because that's not a real word. No one's ever successfully said it.
So these games have very clearly delineated, stealth zones or capture zones that are marked in red on the map. And if you go into those zones, you're in trouble and you know that you've got to avoid being spotted. And, angry factions totally breaks the consistency of that type of messaging as well. So, you know, and a whole block of the map would become a red zone because you'd killed a crocodile, which is kind of a disaster for that type of open world game. You've really got to understand, you know, when you're safe to wander around, when you're not.
Yeah. And I think it plays against something, which could happily be redesigned, I think, but these games, Assassin's Creed games, do have this sense that over the course of the game, you will master the map.
Yeah.
You're not going to actually change the map. You're just going to eat it.
Yeah.
Just gonna eat that man.
One crocodile at a time.
You're one crocodile at a time, and it's gonna become yours, and you're gonna become the biggest man.
Yeah.
And the world will be devoid of icons, because you'll have swallowed them, all of them, one by one, missions, quests, tasks, collectibles, everything.
So there's no point to anything.
Nom. That's how it works. And in that context, having some of them be things you're not supposed to eat kind of plays against the game's logic. Something that would be more interesting for a game like this as a whole would be a more simulated environment where no one's going to get explicitly like angry at you for doing a particular thing, but it genuinely has a consequence. Not a consequence in terms of like, this man is cross because you killed a crocodile, but there are fewer crocodiles now, and that crocodile mattered. And if crocodiles are endangered in some way,
right,
then they become harder to find later on, and that meaningfully affects your progress in some way. Yeah. But that is, at that point, more of a survival game, where continuing to be able to craft the things you want means not over farming or over hunting. And maybe that affects NPCs in some way. And, you know what I mean? Like, there's definitely a kind of simulated environment where you could create a crocodile leather shortage that meant no one has cool shoes. And you can't have the status quo concert in, I don't know what game I'm creating, but like, that's, you know, that's the kind of reaction that I think would surprise people in a positive way. As long as the logic and the messaging of the rest of the game told people, expect there to be interesting consequences for your decisions in terms of hunting. If it was just like, eat as many antelope as you like, but we're going to arbitrarily punish you for the crocodile thing, it's just going to feel like, but you told me that I was king of the world.
Yeah.
And then toys get ejected from prams, and
it's all very sad.
Yeah.
And you start a Reddit thread.
Indeed. Then you start a petition.
Oh yeah. Do both. Go wild.
Treat yourself. You are the king of the world.
Treat yourself.
Video games have told you this. Eat every crocodile you can find.
Wise words.
Yeah. That's maybe a good, actually, you know, if you are ever really so frustrated by a game's reward system that you find yourself compelled to start a Reddit thread and a petition, sometimes it might be a good idea before you do that to just attempt fighting a crocodile.
Go for it. Good luck. Have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Our next question comes from Henry, who writes, Dear Crates, Crows, and Bars.
Okay.
He tried. I recently finished Emily is Away 2, a neat little chatting simulator which combines a touching coming-of-age story with a faithful recreation of the AOL Instant Messenger. It also uses real links to a Facebook-like page and a YouTube-like video service hosted on the developer's website. All of this faithfully creates the late 90s/early 2000s pre-smartphone online messaging experience. This, of course, is a very specific thing, and it's nothing a book or movie would or could ever address, so it would be lost if it wasn't conserved in this game. Can you think of other possible examples of games preserving a bit of history or era-specific experience? Thanks, and keep podding those casts. Henry from Germany. So the game sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
So there's Sibylle also is essentially explicitly this. It's also about a chat experience of a different era. Her story is a simulation of using a computer that has games on it and some work you have to do.
Yeah.
And it's much more than that, but yeah. I think there's two halves of this for me. One is that obviously there are a handful of games, only a handful that explicitly set out to recreate an experience from a particular era. That's one thing. And then there are games that are explicitly retro, and therefore setting out to recreate the experience of playing a particular game from a particular time.
Yeah.
And then there are games that are still around and offer a kind of unique way of re-experiencing something that used to be normal. So like I'm fascinated by, and so I write the They're Back section for PC Gamer now. And that's basically 2 pages of jokes loosely masquerading as retro games. But retro doesn't really mean much now because games never died. It
was a holdover from the days when companies used to do boxed re-releases of games, and you'd sort of re-review them in a jokey way. And it's so long gone that
it's sort of melted and become this sort of daft kind of 2 pages.
It's good. It's good fun.
But one thing I've been doing recently, not like as a thing, but just because I find it endlessly fascinating, is digging my way through all of the old Half-Life mods. So TFC and Deathmatch Classic and Day of Defeat and like all those games that were such staples of my adolescence and kind of defined online gaming for me. Like online gaming was those games and a handful of MMOs really. And what I find really kind of weird is that you can totally still play them, and people are playing them. Like, you can get a game a day of defeat today if you want. Cool. Like, at any given time, about 11 people are playing TFC. But I feel like a profound kinship with each of those people. Yeah. Like, and it's not quite, it's not like an explicitly like this game is setting out to recreate the digital experience of a particular era. But if you played online shooters in the early noughties, late 90s, I'd challenge you to boot one of them up and not be immediately transported to an era of console commands and 56k dial-up connections and, you know what I mean? Like something about the interfaces and the net graphs and the noises and that sound that Half-Life makes all the time.
Right.
That like, I'm 13 again as soon as I hear it. And it's very effective nostalgia.
No, that's awesome.
Which is not just the same as just reinstalling an old game. It's almost like it's still there somehow. It's like still alive.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Contrasting that with something like Stories Untold, which is like couching games within a nostalgic kind of construct, which harks back to like 1980s horror.
Yeah, that's an interesting, like
plays with that, doesn't it?
By way
yeah. But but it puts you on I've not really played it yet, but it puts you in front of a telly, doesn't it? And
it puts you, so it has 4 parts. Right. The first one is a text adventure like Zork, but they are not all like that. It's very good Stories Untold. You should definitely play it. Yeah, it's on my list. Not necessarily a good Steam Link couch game. It's very much because it's interesting because it is a simulation of being sat at a desk.
Yeah.
Everything you are doing in it, with one exception, involves the character is also sat at a desk, which is kind of like an interesting way of.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah, real good. I'd be really interested to see if more games explore this idea of the internet at different points in its life.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. It's something we sort of teased out with HackMed a little bit in some of the most recent stuff, but actually I won't say anything because people might get lore out of it, but, and God knows you can't have that. But there's a futuristic element to that. It's sort of projecting forwards as well as back, and therefore it can't kind of fully reference that. But there's something about old interfaces and things that are still quite good for kind of evoking how things used to be.
Nice.
Yeah. I do thoroughly recommend revisiting the early noughties though in video games, because it's definitely like, it's not years that we're particularly nostalgic for yet. No one is yet nostalgic for that stuff in terms of like remaking it. But, like the nostalgia engine has caught up with early 90s FPSs like Doom and things, like New Doom being explicitly like, let's make that again.
Yeah.
But it hasn't caught up with, original it hasn't caught up with Ricochet. And maybe it never will.
Maybe it never should.
Yeah. Fair. So that is all of the questions we've got time for tonight. If you'd like to send us a question, do email us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. If we didn't read out your question, we do keep track of things, fold them forward. Partly it's usually because we don't have the specific people on the pod don't have an answer. If you sent us something.
Yep.
I would say, as ever, that shorter questions are always easier for us to usually find answers for, but also spend time on, because we get more done. So that's the thing to think about if you're sending us a question, but do send us a question. Sometimes I regret that we don't have a forum anymore, simply because it'd be another good place for people to leave their contribution. So maybe that's something I should try and fix. Wait, I'm not going to commit to that. No. Discord's great.
Discord's great.
Speaking of which, if you'd like to hang out with our community on Discord, you can find them via the link on the website, which is on the top bar and will be in the show notes for this episode. You can also catch our stuff on YouTube. Most of our podcasts go up there, and back us on Patreon if you like. Any support that's granted to this podcast, which is very gratefully received, kind of goes to help us do things like Bloodborne and Pyro and Minis Monthly, and very imminently CNC D&D special, and all sorts of other things. We're, really appreciate if people do choose to chip us a few quid per pod. You find out more about that at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. Otherwise, the most helpful thing is simply, if you like the pod, telling people that you like the pod.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just nice. Yeah. Sometimes you do that in the form of an iTunes review. That's always pleasant. But broadly speaking, just shout it out a window.
Yeah, honk it out.
Just honk it. Just honk it. If you would like to follow us as individuals, although I should say I've stopped using Twitter, so doing this feels like such a tradition that I'll do it. But I have deleted all my bookmarks and the app off my phone. So you can follow me on Twitter at @cthurston.
He's not there anymore.
Yeah, I suspect I will still use it to post links to things that I'm working on and links to articles that I'm working on or something like that. So there may be some value in that, but I'm probably not going to reply to tweets or actually pay attention to it because
Gone fishing.
I wonder if Twitter may be bad for one's, broad happiness is something I've been considering lately.
Reasonable question.
Anyway, if you feel otherwise, then I'm on Twitter at @cthurston. Tom?
PCU Ludo, how did you go?
Cool.
Lovely.
Thanks for listening,
Thanks for listening,
everybody.
everybody.
That's what we do now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thanks to Marsh.